just in terms of some preliminary introduction. So I'm Christopher Evans. I CLB, as you see, hosts the platform for the fund, but in addition to that, I also sit on the platform, and there's two other people who are going to join me for presentation on the presentation. That's Helena and Steve. So if I could, just say a brief hello to Steve. Some of you will know him, but not everybody. So
I'm Steve Smith. I'm the Funding and Development Manager here at Community Links Bromley, and I think I know most of you, but it's good to see you here this morning.
Thanks, Steve. And Helena.
Good morning, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name's Helena Jenkins. I am Principal Loneliness Champion here at London Borough of Bromley. I sit within the Adult Commissioning team, and I commission the Innovation Fund through the local authority.
Helena will also be one of the decision makers on the panel this round, and we'll progress and we'll talk a bit about the process. So what we're going to do this morning is give a brief introduction to the fund, talk a bit about the application process. Thirdly, talk about the application and the support available and some of the issues that I've sat on the Innovation Fund panel for a number of years, and some of the issues tend to be recurrent. Some of the challenges, some of the way people respond to the application itself. So I'll maybe highlight some of those. We're going to talk a bit about what success looks like. So we'll talk a bit about what applications have been successful before, and Steve will talk a bit about the application that CLB previously did and what that looks like and how we delivered that. And then finally, we'll have a space for you to talk a bit about your projects and any questions that you may have that you feel aren't covered in the presentation. Some of this will mirror the guidance. If you've read the guidance, you will be experts as well as us. So bear with us. There will be some people who've been through the process previously, but on the other hand, equally there'll be others who are quite fresh to the process and are applying for the first time. There may be questions that you have along the way. Feel free to ask as I go through the slides if you're not clear, if anything's not clear, because if you've got a question, probably somebody else will be thinking about that. So feel free to interject in the time-honored fashion. If you could put your hand up, and if I missed some of those, perhaps Steve and Helena could prompt and press me. So that's what we're going to run through in the next 45 to an hour with you this morning. So just in terms of the fund itself, the aim of the fund is support and prevention, and it's about supporting early intervention projects. And the themes are outlined in the guidance, and they many respects mirror some of the strategic objectives of the borough as a whole. It's very much about practical ideas to drive change and result in positive outcomes for health and well-being. So we're looking for ideas, proposals, suggestions to reduce social isolation and awareness in adults, to help adults improve their physical or mental health and well-being, to support unpaid carers of vulnerable adults, to provide day opportunities for vulnerable adults and older people, and then support younger people with special education needs and disabilities as they transition into adulthood. As you can see, children don't appear on there. So the fund is very much focused on adult social care and adult needs. And there is some commentary in relation to the exclusions and the scope of the fund in the guidance. So as I said, we're looking for practical ideas that will drive change and result in positive outcome. To learn what works and explore the potential for more effective ways of improving access and support, particularly for adults and communities affected by health inequalities. And it's the borough's commitment to transform learning and progress. So that's the overarching requirements and themes. Just in terms of the funding available, can you remind me, Helene? I think we were saying it was 150,000. Is that correct?
It's around that, yeah, it's around that figure of what's available for the end of this financial year.
Okay.
And then should projects perhaps want the full lump sum, then as of April, the new financial year will start, which means our new kind of pot of money will start again from fresh.
So reasonably substantial sums of money available, and you'll see later on the type of funds and the amount of funds people have applied for historically, and the amount of funds that have been awarded. Obviously, I'll get to that. We'll talk a bit about how many applications we've had historically, and you'll have some context there as well. So that's the fund, and that's the purpose of the fund itself. Just in terms of the application fund, I did want to say what's not funded. Again, there are a range of other criteria and exclusions, but particularly children's projects. We have had children's projects, and we should be clear that they're not fundable projects, invaluable and important as they are. We did a state of the sector report at the beginning that landed last year. And one of the issues that we identified as part of that was actually, what about a parallel fund for children's services? Because there's a significant amount of organisations in the voluntary and community sector who provide important preventative services in relation to children's projects, and it's how we support those. But let's be clear, this is supported by the Better Care Fund, and it's very much focused on eligibility on adults. In terms of eligibility, you need to be based, operate, or plan to operate in Bromley. So that doesn't preclude out of borough applications, and indeed, in the last round that's just gone, we did fund a number of organisations who weren't in the borough. So what we're really looking for is innovation. The key is not that you're necessarily in the borough, but you're going to be delivering in the borough. And so part of that means that you may have a project that's been delivered in elsewhere that it's not been delivered historically in Bromley, and you want the opportunity to test and see the traction there. Priority will be given for organisations that have not been previously funded. We will fund CICs and charities, and funding may be up to 2 years. Just in terms of decision making, we will be reviewing the applications that we received. The closing deadline is the 2nd of February, and we will be meeting within the first 2 weeks to review and make recommendations, and then they will go to the LBB senior management team for sign off. I'm pleased to say last time virtually all the applications that were recommended by the panel were actually approved, and I think that shows that the process itself is robust and stands up. And then the final bit in terms of the application process is the reporting, and if you're successful, these are the requirements. I wonder, do you want to say a few words here, Helena, about the reporting requirements?
Thank you, Christopher. Yes, it was really just to give that kind of forewarning that through the application, as it states on the award letters, and for people that have been previously really successful to around will know this, that there is a number of different reports which need to be produced through your project. They're expected on a quarterly basis to give an update on what's going on with your project, what are the KPIs in which you're being able to reach, what challenges you might be having, and what are the positive stories and examples you're able to include in that. That's really important because the money that is given through this award is public money, and being able to show really how your project is being able to innovate and support the community is really key. Also, that data is really important for you should you want to actually get more sustainable funding, whether it be through National Lottery or other places as well, to be able to show that really huge bundle of evidence that you have of the impact that your project is showing. And we've had a number of different projects like MediSing and others who've been able to get longer periods of funding through it by being able to show that continuity of reporting every 3 months or so through that. So every 3 months you will need to have a monitoring report. There is a standard template which I'll be happy to send out, and then there'll be an end of project report as well. So over the scope of your project, whether it be a year or 2 years, how did that go? What was really good? What could be improved? How have you been able to innovate? Was it cost effective? What kind of social value did you input within the community through your project and others? These reports are also linked to your payments as well. If your project has no reports, then we can't actually evidence to say that these things are going on. So it's really, really key that we have those reports to ensure that you get your payments at the times which are specified through your award letter. Thanks, Christopher.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And just in terms of the application, so the guidance note outlines some of these, and these are the headings. As you'll see on the application and the format of the bids, some of these are weighted. They're weighted.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I can't see your PowerPoint anymore. Did you stop sharing it, or have I pressed something on my computer?
Does that apply to anybody else, or is that?
Oh, what have I pressed?
Still sharing. Still sharing.
Still sharing. It must be you, Nicola. But what I will do, and what we will make endeavour to do, is ensure that the PowerPoint is shared subsequent to the event. We'll link that to feedback. But if you can't see it, what I will do is I'll highlight the key points in any event. So hopefully what I will be underscoring is what's actually on the slide itself, if that's okay. So just in terms of the format of the bid, as I say, different elements of the bid are weighted. There is a word count. The first thing, and it may sound really obvious, is your proposal. What we want to know is what you want, and how much you want to deliver that project. And I say it should be fairly obvious, but actually quite often it's quite difficult to identify what organisations want. Quite often organisations talk a lot about need in the borough, but it's not quite clear what their proposal aims to do to address that. So in the lottery used to have guidance around being smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time sensitive. If you want one worker to work part-time to deliver a project, say that. Be quite explicit about what you want, how much you want, and why you want that sum of money, and think about what difference the service will make in relation to others. Thank you, Isaac, for that. So part of that is just thinking about why your service is different, why the project is different, why the innovation is different. But the other element of that is just thinking about how it relates to other services. So it would be really helpful if you could outline your understanding of current provision in relation to that. So is it unique? What other services are available, for example, in relation to mental health? And how you will align with those services. So what does pathways look like? I mean, if you're delivering a service, how do people access the service, and how you're going to relate to other services, not just statutory services, but also services in the voluntary and community sector itself. And that's 40% of the actual scoring itself. The next bit is about sustainability. And part of that is about thinking about the exit strategy itself. What does success look like? Helena talked a bit about the monitoring, the monitoring required, the reporting. That's clearly really important. It will be invaluable to you in terms of sharing your work with other funders. And the next thing is co-production. I've spent quite a considerable part of last year working on co-production, and a number of you will have attended and participated in some of those workshops. So I hope at this point you're all experts in co-production. Does somebody want to stick their hand up and tell me what co-production is from their perspective? Any thoughts? Any ideas? What does it mean? No hands? Okay. The reason I say that is because quite often what we will get is an application saying we have consulted the service users, and the service users want this, and that's brilliant, and that's really important, and that's clearly evidencing your need. But I think co-production's a bit more than that. It's very much about not just involving your families, your carers, your staff, your volunteers in the concept and the design, but it's also about how our service users involved in the delivery of the projects, how are the service users involved in the evaluation, and how are your service users involved in the output. So think about that. It's very much a wraparound analysis. It's not just about consulting your service users as a one-off and leaving it there. The next thing is around social value. It's slightly less weight, but it is very much about, and I think all these projects and all the projects we will fund clearly add social value to the borough and what the borough does. So I really want to think about your volunteering offer, how you're going to recruit your volunteers, where you're going to recruit your volunteers from. If you're recruiting, are you recruiting locally? Are there local people for local jobs? What are their characteristics? How are we going to engage seldom heard people, but also the environmental impacts of your project. So do think about social value and what that means. The next thing is very much around monitoring and evaluating the outcomes. And again, linking back to sustainability, that's really, really important that we're clear about how you're going to measure your impact. What does success look like? How will you know? What steps are you going to take to measure that impact? And some of that can be case studies, some of that can be anecdotal. Nicola.
Hi, Christopher. Please, can you go into more detail around social value, just so I fully understand what you mean by that?
Yeah, so social value is in terms of your project, how do you deliver it and what additional value does the project bring to the community? So sometimes people think about it in terms of environmental outcomes. So what resources do you use? Where are you procuring the resources? How does a project benefit and value? Um, I think Helena's added a note in the guidance as well. And it's about, well, actually, who are you going to work with? So if you're going to work with volunteers, where are they going to come from? Um, and social value is a way of if you like, looking at your impact. So, for example, if you have 10, say, for example, you've got 10 volunteers working and they're working 10 hours each, effectively, you've got 100 hours of work on that project from volunteers, and effectively, that's added value that comes in, and we can quantify the monetary value in relation to that. If there are particular aspects of the application you're not clear about when you're writing it, then by all means talk to Steve. Steve will help you and navigate you through some of those things, because all of us, I think, will be contributing social value in some way, shape, or form. It's just articulating that, and you can put a monetary value on the contribution that volunteers have. So I hope that helps, but by all means, feel free to come back in relation to that. The other thing is about risk and organisational capacity. You're a smaller organisation and you've not received 50,000, for example, before, and your turnover is quite low. Have you got the capacity to deliver it? What are your skills, competencies? So think about that. That does very much align with risk. So what are your competencies in relation to that? Have you done this work before? What are your skill sets? What support is available, and that's really important. And the final thing that's not in that guidance but will be looked at is your budget. Think clearly about your budget. Again, if you're going to be applying for staff, if you're going to be saying you're going to recruit volunteers, how many volunteers are you going to be working with? And try and tell us how you've quantified the sums of money involved in relation to that. So a lot of people say, I want £1,000 for volunteering. That's absolutely fine. But if you need £1,000, how many volunteers? How much? How are you distributing that? How does it work? Similarly with staff, quite often we see applications with an aggregated figure for staff, and it's not quite clear how many staff are working on the project, how many hours they're working. So be very clear about that and do your costings and think very clearly about that. Helena.
Thank you. I have to drop off in a moment. The one thing that I was going to state was, as Christopher's mentioned, to be as clear and concise as you possibly can be in your proposal, as if you're writing in complete layman's terms, because we might not understand truly what your organisation does, but if you can write it for somebody who has no idea, then it means it gives us a really good foundation to understand what it is that you're trying to deliver.
Yeah,
my second point is that totally plain English. And the second point being is that some people have asked me if it's £50,000 per year in which we can fund, and it's not. It is £50,000 across the lifetime of your project, whether your project is 1 year or it spans over 18 months or 2 years. Each innovation fund, you can have a maximum of £50,000 regardless of the time in which your project will lead to. I just wanted to make that really, really clear for people, so that when you're putting in your applications, your budget reflects that.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
so it doesn't get thrown out straight away because of it.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a great time in the rest of the webinar.
Could I ask you a question before you go, Helena?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt. But I'm aware that you're leaving.
Yep.
And we have been in email contact,
Yes.
and I wasn't clear. So say that we put in a project, say it was for £50,000, and say the panel decided that they really liked the project. However, there are equally other good projects and therefore can't afford to fund us at this time. Are we able to submit the same application or tweak it a bit and then submit it in on the 1st of April if the only reason we weren't successful was because there isn't enough funds available? That bit wasn't clear to me, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. So I would, Christopher, I would say that that's acceptable in terms of sharing your project. And should you want any type of feedback, I'm sure that's something that we can provide to help support people to be successful in their application should they not be, if there be budget constraints, if everybody on the call is applying for £50,000 and you know that there's around 150, then there are going to be some bids which are unsuccessful, and applying again across the year may be helpful, but also working with Community Links Bromley to see if there's other types of funding that might be available which suits your project as well, and that there's always other outside sources where appropriate to help support our projects be funded in different ways outside of our fund. So no, that would be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing more to add to that, Nicola. I think that's spot on. Yeah. Thank you, Elena.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
clarifying.
Take care. You're welcome. Bye. Bye.
So I hope that was helpful. Sorry, just to go back. Just in terms of the support, then, just to underscore that, we obviously host the bidding project. Sometimes people occasionally have difficulty uploading they don't have any difficulty filling the form in online, but occasionally people have difficulty with the documentation and uploading relevant documentation in relation to the bid. If you do need help with that, by all means, either email myself, Steve, or my colleague Catherine, who will no doubt be able to give you any assistance you need with the technical requirements. As I said, that Steve's on the call and will provide one-to-one comments and feedback. Number of people have sent me applications and drafts and ideas, and I've pushed those back in a sense. I have shared those with Steve, and Steve will comment. As you can appreciate, what I don't want to be doing is say this is a brilliant project and then get to the panel and then having to make a decision in relation to that. So if you like, what I do is when the applications come in, I'm looking at them clean and impartially, and Steve may have contributed to that, but there's a bit of a wall between Steve and I in relation to that. The other thing is we've also run a series of workshops to develop skill writing, bid writing skills. They've been really well attended. We will continue to roll those out, and so again, watch out for these. They won't necessarily be coterminous with this round, but notwithstanding that, that is an offer that CLB make and will continue to make to you. So what does success look like? So there's a number of elements, really. First of all, the last round we had 23 applications, and I think there was approximately about 300 plus funds available at that time. We had bids in relation to, we had £735,000 bids, which means that we were over subscribed twofold. The result of that is as Helena was alluding to, there are many bids here that will be really good bids, that we're not able to fund, and preference will be given to people we've not funded before. But notwithstanding that, each application is looked at on its merits, and indeed they're all scored, and they're scored against the criteria that I outlined. And in the last round, just to give you a sense, applicants were applying between 6,000, roughly 6,500, 5,980 and 50,000. So you've got a range of projects. And I wanted to show you some of the projects and some of the type of projects that were funded last time. So Change, Grow, Live, a Bromley Service Users Network, they wanted to establish a recovery hub, and that was funded. The D Foundation was a pilot facilitating entry into the creative industries, particularly for young people with mental health issues, unemployment issues, and low income. Community Catalysts did some work developing the market for personalised health and social care services, and some of you will have contributed to their work. Community Catalysts are one of those organisations that work on a national basis and very much do work with health and social care, and is an example of an organisation that are not based in Bromley, but notwithstanding that, they delivered that project in Bromley, and I think they engaged with well over 400 people, as well as many community organisations, in terms of delivering that services, making a report, making recommendations to adult social care. Casper had a proposal to deliver social opportunities for autistic adults. Bromley Football Club had rather the community trust element of the club had some women's activity program, and so that's just illustrative of the range and type and indeed location. So the final one there is a community project delivered in Mottingham, and that was very much specific to a specific geography and a specific area, and an area of high levels of deprivation and high levels of need in the area. So that, if you like, gives you a sense in terms of the type and nature of the projects that were funded through the last round. For the next slide, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Steve, and some of you will be familiar with this. And I'll come back to that question in terms of the innovation. But if I can, I'd like Steve to introduce the next slide and look at what success looks like from the perspective of this particular project. Steve.
Okay, right. Yeah, we ourselves put in an application for a project back in the early part of 2023. This was very much to pilot a health and fitness program aimed at improving the physical activity amongst voluntary sector staff, volunteers, trustees, and the charity sector across the borough. We made it accessible, so it was much about walking, but you could jog or run if you wished, with the aim to enhance health and well-being, reduce social isolation, and address that inactivity that we all suffered during COVID-19. So we hit two of the main priority areas around health and well-being and reducing social isolation. We requested, it was quite a small amount of money, as some of the projects go. We very much budgeted, so we knew what we wanted to spend the money on, and we're able to itemize that out. So the main cost was to actually secure a platform on which we could base the recording of the teams and the walks that people took and the distances they covered. We tried to make it fun as well by making some of the challenges. The first challenge that we did, because we split it into 2 sections, so we had a pilot that ran from October to December in 2023, which was a virtual walk around the UK. And so that allowed us to test the platform and make sure that we could recruit the number of beneficiaries into the project. And then we could evaluate that, tweak it, and then we ran a longer program, and that's the graphic you can see there. We ran a longer project at the beginning of January when people had got post that Christmas and were looking to become fit and healthy again going into the new year. So we had a longer challenge. This was over 3 months, basically, walking from Europe east to west. And we were able to boost the numbers of people who wanted to take part. We boosted the number of teams, and we had a target, I think, of about 140 participants, and we ended up with 168. So we exceeded the target, which meant we actually had to go back to the platform organisers and actually buy in additional places. So we could accommodate the people who wanted to take part. So a lot of work there around launching, doing some workshops to launch the event and the promotion materials. So we did have some costs around venue hire and promotional materials, as well as the platform and staff time. There was quite a lot of staff time taken up in making sure that the teams worked, that people knew how to log their miles, their walks. And we managed to gather photographs that we were using on social media to promote what people were doing. And we had an end event where everyone came together and could share that success. And we did an end of event evaluation where we got some of these statistics, which we got from the platform, but we're able to get some anecdotal evidence as well, where people were telling us that they, because some of the groups were based around closes, based in parts of the borough, they got to know people who they never knew before. So there was that kind of reducing social isolation. And as regards health, people were saying that they'd lost weight, they were sleeping better, their diabetes issues were reducing, and they felt much healthier and were walking longer and maintaining those habits. So that's it in a nutshell. You know, we did also use things like WhatsApp groups that people could contact each other and share information. So yeah, it was a great exercise to be involved with. I have to say, we actually used a failed bid. And this all came from a failed bid from where we put to Groundworks a year or 2 previously, which was unsuccessful. But we had it on the back burner, and we thought that because we were ticking several of the boxes, that this might be a good proposal to put forward, and we were successful. We did make sure that we had all the reporting in place before we started, because I think it's important to have your monitoring in place before, because it's hard to retrofit those reporting requirements once you get started. So make sure you have all of that in place. I think I've probably said enough, so I'll hand back to Christopher.
Thanks, Steve. Just to that was really helpful as a useful overview. So if you like, that's a discrete project. I should say, just for clarification, ordinarily there is somebody from the ICB on the partnership as well. So I was recused from the panel. I wasn't involved in obviously any of that decision making, and that decision was taken exclusively by the ICB and LB. So that, if you like, gives you a flavour of the projects. Vanessa has asked, can you explain how these projects interpret the innovation element? So the key thing there, I think, is on the tin, it's new ideas, it's new projects, things that haven't necessarily been delivered, that can result in change and positive outcomes. So this was the health benefits of walking itself, doing it collectively, focusing on staff, trustees, and volunteers within organisations, and doing this as teams as opposed to doing it in isolated settings. And so one of the additional outcomes of that was actually it did build teams within organisations and celebrated and supported colleagues and peers to drive change and healthy outcomes. Similarly, the Innovation Fund in relation to, for example, other projects is about where it's delivered and to the cohort. So really, when people are applying in terms of the innovation, we'll be looking for you to say, well, actually, how is this different? And how is this new? How can we has it been delivered before? And as I say, sometimes it would have been delivered in another area, another borough, another part of the country, but it's not been tried and tested in that area. And it's the opportunity to try and test applications that have worked in other areas. Nicola.
I've got a question around the application form itself.
Yeah.
So with the deadline, so a lot of funders would give a deadline, and then if they're oversubscribed, they shut the application early. Would that happen here, or would we still have until the deadline to complete our?
No, you still got until till the deadline.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we know at any given point how many people are registered, and we can obviously see and track the applications. What sometimes happens is people sometimes register on the platform, start it and don't finish it, and we do very much encourage people along those journeys, and sometimes have reached out to say, is there anything we can do to assist with the application? Sometimes people have just gone on to see what the criteria is and have a look at it and how it works, really, and that's absolutely fine. But you will have until the closing deadline. Is it Annie?
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Annie.
Hi, yes, hello, thank you for that. I was just wondering, when thinking of co-production and working across several different charities or CICs, I wonder if time establishing those relationships, or say consulting the chosen group, can be written within the bid, can be within the timeline of the project. I'm just asking because we are very young, under 1-year-old CIC, so we haven't quite had the chance to establish lots of relationships with some of the communities that are a little bit out of us, or with other organizations. So just wondered if that can be written within the project.
I think so. I mean, part of it is sharing the learning as well. So part of it is you're doing a piece of work, you really want to engage and share the journey that you're on. So it's very much about talking to partners and sharing and celebrating as you go on. Helena talked about the quarterly monitoring report. There will be things that you identify as part of the project, the learning, the challenges that you face. It's not necessarily all about successes. Sometimes some of the projects that we've supported have not necessarily been successful. They failed, but actually we want to understand what have been the challenges, what are the challenges in terms of engagement, what are the challenges in terms of mobilization. People are quite often very ambitious in terms of the projects, and that's very laudable, but sometimes that means that the targets can be quite difficult to attain. And we understand that, so try and be realistic about what is achievable. If you're a new charity, it is very much about small steps. It's fine to have a big ambition, but it's about small steps along the way and learning as an organisation from the challenges that you face. And again, once you've received the funding, support will be available from Community Links, but from Helena to help you on your journey, because we want you to be successful. But equally, we understand it can be challenging for organisations to deliver some of these things. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I think that's helpful. Just a couple of other things. We have been recording this, and I should have said at the outset we're recording this. So if there's anybody who doesn't want to be part of the recording, we'll try and edit out if at all possible. But we do want to share some of the feedback that we've received. The other thing I'm interested in doing is doing some blogs with successful projects to promote and celebrate some of the projects, and have a repository of successful projects and a repository of successful learning along the way. So that's integral to the evaluation. The final thing is we will be sharing the slides with everybody who's registered subsequent to the meeting. There is a feedback form that we'd like everybody to complete. It's only 4 questions, but your thoughts and feedback in terms of what was good about this, what worked well, would be really helpful. And the slides will be shared contingent on your completing the feedback form. Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate something that Helena said when she was here, about asking maybe a third party or someone who's not so familiar with your project to look at it. Because you say you're passionate, we know you're passionate, and you know your project back to front, but it's really good to get someone who really is outside your organisation to look at it, to make sure it actually makes sense and it's easily understood. So that's the first thing. The other thing on the application form, say it is online, but as Christopher said, there are word counts, so you might find it easier perhaps to do all your answers in Word, where you can actually almost do it on Word, so you can actually look at the word count and then cut and paste into the application form. So that's one way I'd recommend people do that. And on budgets, again, I think Christopher's very right, that try and be specific. We do see occasions where people put staff costs and we don't know what that means in terms of how hours they're going to work, days. So make that make sense. Similarly, people put venue costs. And I've seen one recently where someone was going to run 3 or 4 events, but they put in over £2,000 worth of venue costs. Well, I don't know if they're hiring Buckingham Palace, but that seems an awful lot for 3 or 4 events. So what does that mean? Is it a full day? Is it a 2-day? Is it a couple of hours? Because that looks like an awful lot of money and will raise questions. So I think, if you are sitting out those budget costs, how many events, how long are those events? What is the cost per event? The same with staffing, how many hours at what rate? Those things are really important because they will help the panel to make sense of those proposals and make the budget fit what you're actually doing as well. I think ask for what you need. Don't overinflate what you're asking for to make it fit 20,000 exactly. Just ask for what you need. Similarly, don't underscore it as well. If you need that and need a certain amount of money to run the project, ask for it. Don't try and cost cut when it looks a very cheap bid, but you can't actually do it for the money. So those are just some other quick tips that I would throw into the mix before we close.
Okay, fantastic. Nicola.
Going back to the budget that Steve was
Yeah.
talking about, I know you're also trying to do a link as well. Are we allowed to put some a small percentage for overheads as well?
I think so. That I mean, if I was doing a project, I would. I think delivering a project, it needs. If you're delivering a project, you've got insurance, you've got accommodation, yeah, so it's perfectly appropriate to add an element for on costs. Different people do that in different ways. You will have to report in this. It will be reported in your accounts. So again, I think it's perfectly reasonable to add a proportion for that. Make it meaningful, justify it. So if you put in 5-10% in, tell us why it's 5% or 10%, and that will be really, really helpful. I think it's perfectly reasonable. I wouldn't have a problem with that. And just in terms of all applications, whether you're successful or unsuccessful, they are all scored. So we are able, therefore, to provide feedback in terms of the elements that worked well. The other element of it, and the other spin-off, I suppose, from this piece of work is that we also work with other funders. We work with the lottery, and we will be doing a series of one-to-one workshops with the lottery. And Steve is currently organising that. As I say, sometimes we get applications that are really good, but we just haven't got the resources to fund them all. And we will, in those circumstances, look to identify other suitable funders for the projects to take them forward. That's our hour. I am going to bring it to a close. Now, it's been lovely to meet you all. I hope you found it useful. And by all means, feel free to comment and feedback, A, through your form, but B, through email subsequent to the event. Have a lovely day, all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.